Self is, by definition, the indestructible and infinite consciousness. I've often said that consciousness is infinite because an infinite number of things can arise within it, and therefore it itself must be infinite. But my consciousness, which is something independent of me as a personality, my underlying awareness, the self, is totally uncoloured by my personality. In this way it's absolutely non-different from the awareness at the bottom of your personality, the awareness within which your personality arises. There's no difference between my awareness and your awareness. It'd be like saying that we live in two different kinds of space. We talk about space metaphorically in all sorts of ways, but if we talk about it in an absolute Newtonian kind of way, then we both live in space. This isn't my space. I'm constantly moving around and vacating space. So I inhabit space, so do you. I don't own the space I inhabit. Neither do you. We've got legalistic definitions of territory, but we're not talking about that sort of thing. We're talking about our natural situation. The space I inhabit is continuous with the space that you inhabit. It's like fish in the sea. They all inhabit the one ocean. We inhabit the one ocean of space, and we arise in the one ocean of awareness, of consciousness. So in this sense, consciousness is infinite as well. Everything arises within it. Your awareness is non-different from my awareness. Although we must be careful about saying my awareness. I'm actually awareness's personality, and so are you. So the space is indestructible. Never let even the thought the self is perishable enter your mind. What perishes, what changes, is not other than the notions this is lost and this has been gained. These are the notions which comprise the notion of a personality, an individual identity. The self, which is eternal and infinite, does not cease to be the reality, and the unreal has no existence whatsoever. So this should help us identify with the self. We are constantly reinforcing the notion of a personal identity. It's part of our education, our growing up, to identify ourselves as an individual within society perhaps. But now we have to move on and get back to our real identity, which we're going to have to let go of at some point. Mortality is the one indisputable fact. This personal identity is changing all the time, as is our physical body, and eventually it will peter out or come to an abrupt end. But this awareness within which our personality arises, this self, we can identify with that. We can turn our attention to it, and we do that by turning the attention to itself, because the attention is awareness. The awareness is consciousness. Consciousness is the self. The self that pervades all everywhere is imperishable. The bodies have an end, but the self, the infinite consciousness, is eternal. The self, or the infinite consciousness, is one and non-dual. What remains when all sense of duality has been abandoned? That is the self. That is the supreme truth. Arjuna asks, "Then, O Lord, what is known as death, and what are known as heaven and hell?" The Lord replies, "The jiva, or the living soul or personality, lives in the net woven by the elements, earth, water, fire, air and space, and also by the mind and the intellect." We can also think in terms of the elements of the periodic table if we prefer. So we've got this notion of a jiva, or living soul. It is a very obvious way of understanding things. If you've ever seen a dead person, somebody that you knew when they were alive, it's very hard not to get over the feeling that something's gone. Something essential to them. It's like the body is a container and it's been abandoned. But clearly what must be the non-physical operator of that body, the life force. The life force has gone. So the jiva here is something which lives in the net woven by the elements and also by the mind and the intellect. And that jiva is dragged by the latent tendencies, which are our past impressions, memory, etc., imprisoned as it is in the cage known as the body. So the jiva is like, it is like a force. It's the force of our tendencies which have to be actualized. We shouldn't have any problem with forces because physics is all about forces. Forces are completely invisible. They're only indirectly detectable. They're completely beyond our senses. If we take gravity as an example, there's different understandings of gravity, but it was originally understood as a force. You can't see it, you can't smell it, taste it or feel it, although you can definitely see its results. Although a force is simply a way of talking. So we could talk about a life force, couldn't we? The life force are the potentials which need to be acted out. In course of time the body gets old. The jiva gets out of that body, even as juice from a leaf when pressed. Taking with it the senses and the mind, it leaves the body and it goes forth, even as scent leaves its source and goes. The jiva's body is none other than the vasana or the residual impressions gained in the body. When the jiva has left the body, it becomes inert. It is then known as dead. So jiva is like the life force. You can think of it as like a magnetic field. But a magnetic field which has been changed, strengthened by other magnetic fields. Although there's more to it than magnetic fields, I'm reminded of very old computer memory which is made up of lots of little magnets. And these magnets can be magnetized one way or the other. And the combination of these magnets allows you to store a computer program on it which will behave in a certain way. So perhaps the jiva is like a magnetic core made up of lots of little magnets which, as soon as they've got some hardware to run in, will start behaving in a certain way. And although magnets are physical things, their actual magnetic fields are not physical. So if we can just imagine the magnetic field without the magnets, then we've got the jiva. I don't know if that helps or not.